It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, February 25th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that can always get excited about a home and home against the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Like, who doesn't? If you don't, something's wrong.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here, as always, with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can follow us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials. And of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Phantoms Tuesday. We have a lot to get to with Lehigh Valley. They had a pretty strong weekend, and so I'm excited to talk about a few of the key players there. But first, we got our first words of significance, I think, from John Tortorella since he got back from Four Nations, as well as this Penguins home and home to talk about here. And I thought it was really interesting what he had to say yesterday after practice about his Four Nations experience, including the fact that he drove back from Boston so as to not be on the plane with the celebrating Canadians, which is, of course, a very Torts thing and
A very
hilarious.
thing, because he wouldn't be able to hold it in. Like, he'd be
I
fuming the
know.
whole time.
I know. It's very cute. You don't often say things are cute when it comes to
Right.
John Tortorella, but that was very, very cute.
Although, to be fair, I drive everywhere. I would have driven anyhow. So
Yeah, yeah. But I thought it was interesting. He talked about how he did a lot of in-game management and adjustments, and which line to send out when versus like running anything in the practice because of Sullivan and Quinn's kind of relationship and how
yeah.
they could handle it, and that's how it developed. And I thought that was an interesting aspect of how they worked together.
So he adjusted to be an assistant
Yeah,
because he used to be an assistant with the Rangers way back when. So
right.
it's not like he hasn't done it before. So he just had to kind of do
Yeah,
it again.
yeah. And he said he had a blast. So good to hear. And that, he did take stuff away, in terms of talking to the other coaches
Yeah.
and how they run things. And so that was cool. He also talked a little bit about the new guys specifically, I think was the
hmm
bulk of the conversation they had. And that he talked about it was good to have the new blood in the room, but understand that that room demands accountability, that there was this like happy medium between the like the new faces and the new styles of play that they have available to them, but also trying to maintain that culture, which is something we talked about, right?
Yeah. The one thing that definitely caught my eye was what he said about Kuzmenko.
Mhm.
Kevin Kerr tweeted it, and I was like, yeah, I get that. At least he understands, because I think he saw that first 10 minutes that I did too before the power play and goal, and it's like, okay, like, you're going to have to play better 5-on-5. Like, he is, if he wants to get a contract with them. And I think
Sure.
that's the part that we've talked about that we're going to have to see from him.
Yeah, exactly, and I think Torts was pretty clear about that as
He was
well.
very clear.
Yeah, and the fact that, he had mentioned a couple things to Kuzmenko during the game against the Oilers. Kuzmenko fixed it later in the game, and he was
Yeah.
very pleased with that. So it seems like the relationship is off to a good
It
start.
started off good. The thing with Kuzmenko was always keeping doing that every game, every shift.
Yeah,
Like, that was his
right.
issue. So we'll track it.
Yeah, absolutely. But he also liked Kuzmenko's role on the power play, as we
hmm
talked about. That he'll be on that bumper, but really liked the puck movement
hmm
that happened there as well. And Torts knows his reputation, and that the accountability in the room should help him, but to be determined. And I think
Right.
that's where we're all out. So it's good. It's good to see that Torts is kind of on the same page with all of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected him to be any other way, simply because he's not the GM anyhow. Like, he's just going to treat him like how he treats guys.
Yeah, totally. He also talked about, the injured guys coming back and how, he thought Ryan Paling looked pretty solid, all things considered, coming back from a head injury, that he wasn't hesitant out there, which was good. And he also talked about liking the Couturier line
Hmm.
and that Tippett and Mitchkoff were both very much helped by that line and how they played.
Yeah, I mean, and a test for them we'll talk about in the next segment will be against Pittsburgh, which center they get and which line they're getting.
Yep, absolutely. Now, as sort of a side note that has nothing to do with the Flyers specifically, but as listeners or viewers may be aware, I have mentioned this several times. I have been nervous about the March 20th game against the Washington Capitals
Yeah.
for months about that being the OV goal game. Because I, under no circumstances, would like the Philadelphia Flyers to be the team that he breaks the record against. And he got a hat trick against the Oilers, which, by the way, you're welcome for, to the Caps for the Flyers wearing the Oilers out
Yeah.
uh, in the second half of the back to back that the Oilers had, allowing for said hat trick. 13 goals to go, and 12 games from now is that game. So it's looking more and more possible right now.
It really is. I mean, I spoke to somebody who covers the Capitals, and we were like mapping it out, and I intend to try and cover that game wherever he's going to maybe do it. And the first thought was maybe UBS when the Capitals play them, but that's in April. I don't think it's getting to April now unless something
Mm-mm.
happens. So, you would think if he's even within 3 goals and he's playing the Flyers, then
I
I
know,
understand.
and if you look 3 or 4 games on either side of that, Caps are not playing in division rivals the
Right.
entire time. It's just the Flyers dead
Right.
smack in the middle of that 3-week period, and I'm just like, "Oh, no."
Yeah, there's a chance. There's
I
definitely a
know,
chance.
I know.
I mean, listen,
Could
he
be
weightlifted
dangerous.
in during the break with Kasperitis, and the one thing I could tell you is because I've covered Kasperitis, that guy was always in tremendous shape. So, we've never seen Ovechkin do that where all of a sudden he's on a break and he's lifting weights, but he really wants it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, in the meantime, the Philadelphia Flyers will be facing the Pittsburgh Penguins in the home and home. This is the third meeting of the season between the two teams. The Pens won 7-3 in December. That was not a great game. And then, if we recall, the last game before the break, the Flyers won 3-2 on February 8th. And I think, the Pens have lost 3 straight and the Flyers have won 2 straight. And so that's where the difference is, despite the fact that they're both kind of at the bottom of the division right
Yeah. I mean, right now the Pens are playing a little worse. I mean, Sid's elbow is not
now.
great.
Mhm.
We saw that in the Four
No.
Nations. He's going to play, but it's not great. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Now, again, he's playing the Flyers, so maybe it'll magically get healthy because that's just what he does. But they certainly are not a great team. The Flyers, I could say, are a little better for sure. So, yeah, this isn't as scary as it used to be, but you still have some matchups you have to worry about. There's still guys you have to worry about. And so that's the thing. It's like anything else. You could take away the records. These two teams don't like each other, so they're going to play hard no matter
Correct.
what.
Absolutely. And there is still the Four Nations hangover for sure,
Yes.
with Mike Sullivan, Crosby, Ricard Raquel also played in Four Nations as I talked to him there. So there's still a little bit of that hangover there. And then you look at the most recent game for the Pittsburgh Penguins and their return to action. They lost 5-3 to the New York Rangers despite outshooting the Rangers 35-16.
Yeah, that was a game where like the Rangers got beat 8-2 by the Sabres, and then they stole a game from the
Yep.
Penguins. So they're definitely you're able to steal one. I'll also say, in the frame of losing, uh, if people want to check out the fight with Rucker McGroarty that he had, boy, did he lose a fight. Oof.
Mhm.
I'm not sure he's going to fight again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Shesterkin kind of stole that game
Yes.
to a large degree. But the Pens were 0 for 3 on the power play, and that was a huge deal, I think, in that game.
Yes.
They were also out hit 29-11. Now, Matt Rempe was in the game for the Rangers, but he didn't even have that many hits overall. This
Well, I
was like
think
a
because he
team.
got flagged early, that's why.
He
Again,
did.
he's
He
he's this is the one thing I don't like about the league. And this is going to affect the Flyers if they ever get somebody Rempe's size. Somebody Rempe's size is almost not allowed to hit anybody anymore because
right.
almost every hit's a penalty, and that's a little crazy.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, that was a huge, huge factor in that game. Again, to be out hit 29-11, but
Yeah.
still outshoot the Rangers that way, like that was a really significant effort by the Pens there. And again, they still lost the game. But there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to this matchup and what's going on with the Pens. We are going to do that and then dive into our Phantoms Tuesday report coming up next.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Just stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsor jobs post, put your post at the top of the page, and help you reach the right candidates faster. When you have a new project that requires just the right hire to pull it off, the pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsor jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need.
All right. So continuing our preview of the home and home against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Of course, we're going to talk about the first game on tomorrow's show. Plus, we've got our mailbag segment. So make sure to get those questions in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail. You can send us a message on any of our socials, or you can comment on our YouTube channel. I think, obviously the Pens are not a good team this year overall, like we've been talking about. And there's this race to the bottom of the division there between the two teams. But one place that they do excel is at the face-off dot. And I think that, with Crosby and Malkin and, Sean Couturier is going to have to shoulder the load here, probably more than he would have otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something where, um, again, and I kind of alluded to it, it's going to be interesting to see how that line matches up and who
Hmm.
Torts is going to match it against. I mean, they're the home team. They have to change. So if it's not working against, let's say, Crosby's line, then they're going to have to switch it. But then you got Malkin.
Right.
So there's no real saving grace here.
Absolutely. And then, I mentioned that in that most recent game against the Rangers, they were 0 for 3 on the power play, but that's actually been pretty successful for them this year. And when we talked about the game right before the break, that was one of the things we mentioned was that despite everything, they've managed to improve what was a disastrous power play from last season over to this season. And, they're top 10 in the NHL on it this year. But the last game did not go well for them on that front.
No, but again, I think this one we expect that they'll be fired up for, and uh, it's easy to talk about Crosby, but Rust and Raquel are hard to
Mhm.
handle, and you still
Yep.
have to, again, the power play with Carlson, you always have to watch out for. Like that's something where, so again, when you were talking about faceoffs, I do think like, okay, they got away with Noah Cates against the Oilers the other day. Crosby's a little banged up. I don't know if Noah Cates can match up with Sidney Crosby. I mean, I'll
No,
just say
I
it. I
don't know
mean,
that
just
either.
so
Not at the dot. I think
not
at
at the
other
dot.
aspects of the
Yeah,
game, like when Noah Cates is on it as far as being a good defensive
yeah,
forward, I think he can handle Crosby, but not at the dot. That is
right,
absolutely
right.
correct.
So that's why you almost have to put Couturier on. I mean, you just hope he could do it for the whole game.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Now, the other big Achilles heel for the Pens is goaltending.
Right.
And in that game against the Rangers, Blomqvist had 11 saves on 15 shots on goal. Um, I would think we would see Ned, but then also maybe they'll wanna play Ned at home. So, who knows? But their
Yeah, I don't
goaltending
know.
is a mess.
It's a mess. I don't have a good feeling about who they're gonna have in. The only thing I'll say is it'll probably be easier if it's Blomqvist because at least Ned Jelkovic is a battler, and
Right.
sometimes he could battle. And so, but I don't know who they're gonna use.
I don't know either. I'm sure we will see Urson in the first game
Yes.
and then maybe again in the second game because there's a day off in
Right.
between, but to be determined on that front for sure. But it should be an interesting couple of games. I think it'll get a little feisty as per
Oh, yeah.
usual, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's always listen, it's always exciting when the Penguins are in. It's a great rivalry.
Okay, so the Lehigh Valley Phantoms here. We had a great episode last week with Maddie Campbell from
Yep,
Broad Street Hockey, talked about a variety of topics, and we had some differing opinions. So I thought it was
we did.
really good because it's always good to get a different perspective on some of these guys as well. And so we haven't really dove into the game results or anything
Right.
like that in a couple weeks here. And God bless the Phantoms. First of all, they got points in every single game this past week, and they ended the week on a high note, winning 5-4 at Rockford. They
We'll
had
do
a
a slow clap
Midwest.
on that one.
We will, because and it's more than a slow clap, I would say, because not only did they get points in all the games and win, end on a high note here.
Hmm.
Now, they played like two similarly rated teams in the Central Division, which we don't see very often. So they had two games at Grand Rapids and then a
Right.
game at Rockford. Again, so not a ton of experience against those teams. They did earlier this season, but the second game against Grand Rapids was a shootout loss, so they still got a point in there.
Yeah.
And I think overall, the last 2 weeks, the Phantoms have performed better than they had in the previous month, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they put themselves in pretty good position, but I saw Springfield still only 2 points behind them,
Right.
which is pesky.
Yes, and that's the big problem here is they've still played so many more games than the other teams in the
Yeah.
division that it's just hard to gauge
Right.
because of everybody else having games in hand on them except for one of the teams below them, I
Right.
think, which doesn't help them, right? You need the
No.
teams above you to have games in hand on,
Correct.
and like that's not the way it
That's
is
where,
right
yeah,
now.
it does make it very difficult to analyze.
Right. So we're gonna have to wait a couple weeks until maybe it's even
I
closer in
mean,
terms
is
of
that when it's gonna
games
some
played
teams
here.
are gonna catch up? It's gonna take weeks?
I know. That's what's so difficult is like they keep having like 2, 3 games a week for the Phantoms, and so other teams aren't gonna
Right.
catch
Whatever
up to
happened
them.
to those? Didn't they used to have like Tuesday morning games at like 11 a.m.? Remember those games?
Sometimes for like the office special
Right,
or
right.
something like that.
Aren't they having
Yeah.
those anymore?
Yeah, and so I think part of the success is due to with the Flyers being healthy, all those top guys on the Phantoms are with the Phantoms now, and it
Right.
makes the biggest difference.
It
So
does.
Emile Andre is there, Richard is there, Abels is there, Jacob Gaucher is there, and I think it's given them a boost.
Is Emile Andre gonna be there on Tuesday?
TBD.
GBD. All right.
We will see. I mean, I don't think the Flyers are making any changes,
I don't think
so
so
I think
either. I think he's gonna be there.
yeah, I think he will be as well. Now, the one ding here is that Samu Tuomala, who was hurt last week, we talked about that a little bit with
Yes.
Maddie. He did play in the Wednesday game, but after playing the complete game, he was like pretty much invisible. They decided he was still too banged up to play, so
Yeah.
he did not play the other two
All right.
games.
Well, that was smart to be
And
precautionary.
yeah, I think so. But Anthony Richard played all 3 games, and I think that, he was one of the standout performers, of the last week. He had 3 goals and 2 assists for the week. He had key goals in both wins. He was the he was held off the score sheet in that shootout loss, which I thought was interesting. It's like, so goes him, so goes the Phantom sometimes.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, he is a big driving force. That's true.
Yeah, and then, Emile Andre, another standout performance week for him. I think he's really like it was rough going for him for a little bit with the
Yeah.
transition back to the Phantoms, but I think he's playing great now.
If
He
there
had a
were the
goal
same
and 2
system,
assists.
Rachel, it would be easier, but it's hard when you're
Right,
just going willy-nilly. You're going from structured torts to unstructured phantoms. It's not easy.
right. So, and I think he had an assist on a Hunter McDonald goal, which we're
Mhm.
gonna talk about him next, but, I just thought he was playing really smart. I thought he was good away from the puck. I thought he was good with the puck. I thought his goal in the shootout loss was a great shot, from inside the blue line a little bit, kinda, 2/3 of the way up, and I it was a tremendous shot. And I think that, yeah, I think he's looking really, really good right now. So I'm very pleased to see that.
Yeah, his future should be in the NHL, not the AHL.
Absolutely. And then Hunter McDonald, we have talked about a bunch, and that
We have.
he is a slow burn
Mhm.
prospect for sure. That it's just going to take him a while to get to the NHL, especially being a defensive defenseman, right? He's not going
Yeah.
to be like a flashy guy, but at the
No.
same time, I think that he has shown demonstrable improvement
Mhm.
over the past, like, at least 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, and, he even got on the scoreboard
Yeah, I
this
saw
week.
the goal.
Yeah, it was a real solid goal, and I would say, he's generally playing better away from the puck. I think his defensive coverage is getting better. I think he's anticipating a little bit better, and I think, that's all we want from him is to show growth over the
Right, it's
course
in
of
it's
this season.
incremental, like, for people that want
Mhm.
to rush him to the NHL, it's the wrong thing, because if you want
Yeah,
him to go up there and be a disciplined, which still discipline is still a thing with him. If you want him to
yeah.
be a disciplined shutdown guy, and I don't think he'll be a top 4 guy, people. I just think he'll be on the 3rd
He's a
pairing.
3rd parent, which is fine. We
Right,
need that,
yeah,
right?
nothing wrong with that, but it's gonna take time.
Yeah.
And you don't want him to go up there this year. I don't even want him to go up there next year. I want this guy to really
Yep.
become, because
Agree.
again, if you're really that good in the AHL, be an all-star, get your team into the playoffs, go far in the playoffs. Those things matter rather than trying to bring up a guy because he's big and physical to the NHL club, because then the trying to shut down those guys becomes way harder. The
Yeah, and
AHL is
then
a
you
hard
lose
league,
confidence.
correct. The AHL is a hard league, but the NHL is light years ahead of the AHL.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot more to talk about, including goaltending and special teams and the week ahead for the Phantoms. We are going to do that coming up next. All right. So, of course, like always, the elephant in the room is goaltending
Of
here.
course.
And it partially relates to the Alexei Kolosov conversation because, as we know, Kolosov is still on the Flyers roster. They have not sent him down. And, I've been kind of mixed bag on Parker Gahagan, but I would say as he's had to be the number one guy, he's gotten better and better in net. And I
Yeah, he
think,
battles, I
again,
give him that.
he does, and the first game of the week last Wednesday, 39 saves on 41 shots. That was a tremendous effort on
Yeah,
his part, against Grand Rapids there, and I would say, slightly rougher game on Friday in this, the second game of this series there, but, that shootout was so close anyway. He did what he could, and I think he's doing the Lord's work for the Phantoms right now.
yeah, I mean, the hard
Uh,
question would be if I had to ask you today, "Rachel, they're making the playoffs tomorrow, who's your goalie in the playoffs?"
well, that's the question. Now, the interesting twist is that Bob Rotruk on the broadcast mentioned specifically that Makaniemi and Peterson are skating and practicing now. They didn't go on the road trip, but they're
Right,
practicing, and it could be a couple of weeks, like 2 to 3 weeks, for them, one or
right,
both of them to return. And then, Gahagan and Petrozelli go down to
right.
the Royals, which is fine, right? But if we get both of those guys back, then we're kind of looking at a situation where Alexei Kolosov has nowhere to play.
Well, I mean, I don't think he wants to, so we could just not I'm not even worried about it, but, like, Makaniemi didn't play long enough for us to say he's definitely gonna be the guy. So,
No, but he could
and
be the backup to
he could be, he
Peterson.
could be. But the other problem is you just get used to playing in front of Gahagan, and now if both those guys were to get sent down and both these guys are back, now there's another adjustment that this team has to make.
Yep. Yep. And that's a huge factor as
It
well.
is.
So I think that that's something to keep an eye on as we get closer and closer to the end of the season. The Phantoms only have 20 games remaining. That's not a lot of
No,
lead time to figure out how you want your system to work in front of which goaltender.
right. No, that's true. Time's running out.
Now, with special teams, I think, the power play, I would say not great. They were 1 for 8, but they did not get any chances at all in the
Wait, so if
Wednesday
1
game.
for 8's not great, what would be great?
Like 3 for 8, I would say.
You're saying great for the
Honestly,
Phantoms, not great
for
in
the
real life.
Phantoms.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to go with the understand what
Yeah.
this grading system is. Okay.
Oh,
Now I
no,
get it.
this is all relative.
Okay. Now I get it. I'm with you.
Yeah, they didn't get any power plays on Wednesday, so this is over 2 games. So,
Yeah.
it is what it is. But I think in that Saturday game, the fact that they won going over 3 on the power play, that's shows you how good their game was at 5-on-5,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there's a good side to that
Yeah.
negative
No,
in
there
that
is.
they played well 5-on-5.
They did.
Absolutely in that game. I would say the penalty kill could be better. I think that Friday game that they did lose in the shootout was where they were the weakest on the PK. They were 4 for 6. First off, they got to stay out of the box and not have 6 penalty kills.
Right. Yeah, they've
But
had that
also,
trouble all year.
yeah. Now, I thought the week before they were much better in
Yeah.
terms of the discipline, but it's a week to week thing with the Phantoms. But I think that other than that, they played very well
There's still one
on the
name
penalty
that I know
kill.
you put on the sheet that I've taken notice. At least J.R. Avon is playing better now.
Yes, he is. He absolutely is. And, he scored this weekend as well. Now it was kind of like, a bonus goal
Sure. But
at
a
the
goal's a
end,
goal.
but still a goal's a goal. And we had talked about how important it was for him to be getting on the board. And so the fact that he did, I think was really important.
Yeah, I agree. I want to see him sort of end it strong. That would be nice.
Absolutely. And Thade Wisdom had another good week. His second half of his season has been very good for him. And again,
People I think
that's
are
all
just misunderstood when we talk about Zayed Wisdom. Like I've seen it
we
online.
just want him to get another AHL contract. That's
Right.
all we want.
That's it. I think he's earned that. That's it. That's
Yeah.
the goal.
Yep. And I think, Jacob Gaucher, I think, is still playing very well right now, which is good. He's in the second spot as far as scoring on the
Right.
Phantoms go, with Tuamala out. Lixel's back in the number 1 spot, and Gaucher's in the number 2 spot, which I think kind of checks out.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wild to me that Anthony Richard is in the 4 spot, but he's only played 25 games.
I know.
with the
He's
Phantoms
very productive.
'cause he's been up with the Flyers. So he's over a point per game, and he's
Yeah.
the only one on the team
Yeah.
that is over a point per game there. But again, he's playing quite well. So I think, it- like I said, they're playing well overall. Let's hope it
They're
continues.
catching
Let's hope
up. They're making, they're
Yeah.
catching up in the standings, sort of, and then we have to see how it shakes out.
And, they have some opportunities this week to do that. Again, another 3-game week they have, so that other teams are
Yeah,
not
they
gonna
need to
catch
have
up to
one game
them.
week so other
I
teams can
know.
catch up, or they're going to play 4 or 5. I don't know what's going to happen.
So they're playing tonight at Milwaukee. This is like the end of their Midwest road
Right,
trip against
right.
the less frequently played teams. But their games this weekend, they've got Friday and Saturday at home against Bridgeport. If they don't demolish Bridgeport in both of those games, that's going to be an issue, right?
Right. Yeah, they can't drop one to Bridgeport.
Right. Right, exactly. And the Milwaukee is the number 1 team in the Central Division. They are
Yeah.
a very tough opponent.
Always
And
have been.
so,
Yeah.
as long as they play them tough, I will take, solace in that, even if they don't win the game. Now,
Right.
I
But
think they can win the game.
sure.
Anything can happen, but I think they just have to match up well against them for me to consider it a
Yeah, if they
success.
could get a point in that one, that would be big.
Mhm. That would be huge. But those 2 games against Bridgeport better be good ones for
Yeah.
them, I would say.
You're throwing down the gauntlet.
Well, listen, they need it. They
I
absolutely
agree.
need it.
I've never been to that rink. I pass it on the highway all the time, but I've never been in it.
Yep. I know. I passed by it on the train on the way back and forth to Boston
You
for
see
Four
it all the time, but
Nations.
I just have never been
All
in.
the time. All the time. All right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow to talk Flyers versus Pens. We've got the mailbag and so much more. So let us know your Flyers or Phantoms thoughts or questions. You can let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on Twitter and the same socials. SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.